Good evening. Let me do the Pentecostal way by repeating the greeting. Good evening. All right, that sounds a lot better. Please do turn to Psalm 139 as we continue to seek to answer the question, can God be trusted in my situation? This evening I'll be calling us to reflect on God and why we must trust Him. And the simple answer is because He's God. Because He's God, we can trust Him, but we'll seek to simply reflect on three attributes, three characteristics, three excellencies of God that will be supposedly, or I hope, compelling reasons as to why we can trust God. So the God who is all is worthy to be trusted. The God who is all is worthy to be trusted. To personalize that title, our God who is all is worthy to be trusted. So the God who is all, and three attributes that demonstrate the allness of God and why we must trust Him. Psalm 139, we will read the first 16 verses of the 24. The idea would have been to read all the 24 verses, but because we'll be turning to another psalm, we will read the first 16 verses. And the first 16 verses basically brings out the first two of those attributes. Psalm 139, O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down, and you are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. Where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, if I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the utmost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as the day, for darkness is as light with you. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them. By way of division, you could actually divide that section by reflecting on God's attributes. One, that God is all-knowing. Secondly, God is everywhere present. And thirdly, God is all-powerful. not be reflecting on God being present everywhere, but simply the first section and the last section of that psalm, and then we will cross to another psalm for our reflection. The God who is all. One of the people I've disappointed in life was in my early pastorate. I'd gone for internship to Mansa during my 4th year, and I think an announcement had been made at Central Baptist Church that Pastor Lama from Theological College of Central Africa will be coming and will be with us for the 4 months. So 3 months plus the holiday one. So Pastor Lama will be coming. I'm not sure how the announcement was made. So anyway, I traveled and I went on a Thursday, and on a Saturday, one of the young men I was staying with, or was asked to stay with, was keeping the church house, asked that we take a walk. And those of you that are from Mansa, we were crossing Mansa River and going to Mansa College, Mansa Trades. And then we met a young man at the bridge. And the person I was with said to him, meet Pastor Lama. And I could read from his face the disappointment. Because in his mind, one was expecting a white man. I wasn't. But secondly, he was expecting somebody like Pastor Kabwe, a little bit rounded up. I wasn't. I was literally thin. Now, if I say thin, this is the big of me. I was thin. And so he's thinking, okay, my expectations are not met. Expected a white man with a thick voice and an imposing stature. But if it was going to be a black man, at least a little bigger, not some small guy. And I was single guy that time. So who I was a terrible disappointment for him. Well, after the 4 months, I think he said, just as well you came, whatever he meant. But who we are sometimes can be terribly disappointing. I think it's the Burkina Faso president whose story has been told that he was on Air France. And the lady in charge of this particular flight didn't know who he was. So didn't relate to him very well. Actually was very hostile, at least that's what the story says. Whether it's true or not, we're not sure, but that's what the story said. So basically was treated very, very badly. And that President Traore did not reveal who he was. But in the interactions, it was very unpleasant. So until Air France landed, and then this lady realized there were flashing vehicles. They were coming to receive somebody extremely important, and she had no clue who it was on the plane, except everybody else had to wait. Lo and behold, it was this supposed young black guy who in the eyes of the air hostess was not worthy to be treated well. And she realized he was actually the president. And she knew at that moment that her stay in that country will not be long. He looked simple, and like me still remained simple, but this lady discovered she had actually mistreated the head of state. And the story obviously is clear. She was asked to leave Burkina Faso because she was living there. Her diplomatic passport was cancelled, and that same flight was the flight that she used to return to France. What made the difference? If that lady had mistreated me, she would still be in Burkina Faso. But she mistreated the president. It's who he was that made the difference. And I think sometimes as Christians, a part of the challenge and the confusion and the unsettledness emanates sometimes from maybe forgetting who God is. Because if we reflected on who He is, many of anxieties and our worries and our fears would be, if not removed, would be lessened. Or the focus and optimism would be particularly be placed in a better place. The God who is all is a sufficient reason for us to trust this God. God can be trusted because of who He is, as is seen in the following three attributes of God. Can God be trusted? And I'm answering that question with an affirmative yes. He must be trusted because of who He is. Because of who He is. Who is this God? Well, as we read Psalm 139, verse 1 to 8, the psalmist clearly shows us that He is an all-knowing God. He is an all-knowing God. Those of you that like big words, He is an omniscient God. And therefore, in Psalm 139, what is being reflected on, or that the psalmist is awed by, is the omniscience of God, the all-knowingness of God. Just a reading of the text tells us that that's what he really is reflecting on, and he marvels at such a great God. Notice in that passage the repeated word know. That verb know, or the equivalent words discern or acquainted. You are aware, you know as you investigate, not that you don't. So 139, O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know me. Now God is searching not because He needs to investigate, but the psalmist is simply saying, you know me in such a way that if we are to use the language of search analysis, you've known me. You know when I sit down. And the implication, you know me when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. He is describing how God knows him. He knows him in terms of his movements, sitting and moving. He knows his thoughts, not from near, not from a close interaction, but he knows his thoughts from afar. You search out my path, my lying down, and are acquainted not with some of my ways, with all of my ways. You know, even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it not in part. You know it altogether. And you lay your hand upon me. And then verse 6 concludes what he's been reflecting on. He's moved to worship. He's moved to acknowledge the greatness of this God, reflecting on his knowledge. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I can not attain it. What the psalmist is awed with, it is the all-knowingness of God. He is amazed at the fact that God knows him in and out, left, right, center, back. He knows him completely. He knows him inward in terms of his thoughts. He knows before he speaks the words. He knows his movements. And as you read elsewhere, he knows the number of his days. He knows him because he formed him. In the intricacies of the mother's womb, God knew about him and put him together. And he is amazed. He is overwhelmed that he basically bursts out in worship. Such knowledge is too wonderful. I cannot attain it. But it is true in relation to you. It is a truth echoed to Job in the context of his afflictions when Job was pleading his innocence. You read the book of Job. He's afflicted in the worst way possible. Almost everything he had is lost. And Job comes before God and says, you know I've lived right. You know I've obeyed your laws. You know I've been faithful. But here is my theology. Those that live right surely must be rewarded. And the very opposite has happened. So God, where are you? I would like to interact with you. I would like to ask you questions. Well, God, gracious and humorous as he is, comes on the scene. And there is what he says to Job in chapter 37, 14 to 16. Hear this, O Job. Stop and consider the wondrous works of God. And here is the challenge. Do you know how God lays his command upon them and causes the lightning of his cloud to shine? Job, just stop. You're wrestling with issues of suffering. And in a sense, yes, you're blameless, you're right. But here is where you've crossed the line. You're questioning my dealings with you. But let's begin here. Let's begin with your knowledge. In comparison, as it were, to mine. Do you know how God lays his command upon them and causes the lightning of his cloud to shine? Do you have that knowledge? Verse 16, do you know the balancing of the clouds? The wondrous works of him who is perfect in knowledge. Do you know, Job? The implication is this, because the one dealing with you does know. He is perfect in knowledge. The psalmist is awed at the fact that God knows everything. And in Psalm 139, 1 to 8, he's giving us the details simply as a sample. That's not all. That's not all about God. If you read Job 37 to 41, it's all about who this God is. But the psalmist, when he reflects on God's knowledge, and notice it is simply knowledge about him. The psalmist is not even dealing with God's knowledge in relation to the universe. He's not dealing with God's knowledge in relation to salvation. He's not dealing with God's knowledge in relation to how he governs everything. No, simply how he knows the psalmist and how he knows us. God, beloved, knows everything possible. Everything that there is to be known, God knows. Everything actual that there is to be known, God knows. All events and all creatures of the present and the future. And as you read the text, you get an indication of his knowledge, not just today, not just outward things, not just past things, but future things. Oh Lord, you've searched me, past tense, and known me. Past tense. You've known me. You've known where I've come from, who I was, what I have done, how I've lived, who I've offended. You've known me. Well, present. Verse 2, you know when I sit down and when I rise up. It's a simple present continuous statement. Not only have you searched and known, you do know me when I sit down and when I rise up. Well, what about thoughts that have not yet come to pass? You discern my thoughts from afar. Irrespective of where you are or where my thoughts are, you know them. Verse 4, what about my words? Do you know them when I speak them or before? Even before a word. Even before a word is on my tongue. Before a word is on the tongue, it is in the mind. It's in the process system. It is not yet verbalized and coined. David or the psalmist says, you know the words before I speak them. You know, as mothers, when you're cooking, I ask this question many times, and if it's in Shimand, porridge jumps out and lands on your chpanta. Before you say those words, God knows them. Even those words you've not said, He knows them. He knows if they are going to be ugly or if they are going to be nice. He knows when you're angry and you're at the verge of just pronouncing obscenities, but you restrain yourself. He knows the past, the present, and the future. God is perfectly acquainted with every detail in the life of every being in heaven and on earth. That's what Job told us. The wondrous works of him who is perfect in knowledge. There is no defect in God's knowledge. If he forgets, that's imperfection. If he's inaccurate, that is imperfection. If he misses the point, that knowledge is not perfect. If the detail is not too much, that knowledge is not perfect. If he does not know about your affliction, that knowledge is not perfect. If he does not know the extent of your difficulties, his knowledge is not perfect. If he does not know how your circumstances affect you and your life, his knowledge is not perfect. If this God is not aware of a minute detail of the challenges of life you're going through, he is not worthy trusting. But here is what Job and the psalmist would say. He is perfect in knowledge and is all-knowing. God is perfectly acquainted with every detail in the life of every being in heaven and in earth. He knows what is in the darkness. Daniel chapter 2 verse 22. Nothing escapes his notice. Nothing can be hidden from him, and nothing is forgotten by him. In the text that we read just after verse 6, 7, one of the statements is this in the context of hiding. Where can I hide from you? If I choose to go in the darkness, well, here is how knowledgeable you are, but also how present you are, that even darkness is light to you. Verse 11 of Psalm 139, if I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. So you know about where I am. You know about my whereabouts because you're present. Nothing can be hidden from you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light with you. I can't hide. There is no way that it can be said of you, you don't know where I am because it's dark. No, you do know. You do know every place and every situation in my life. It is this knowledge that causes him to exclaim, that is the psalmist, such knowledge is too wonder for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. In the language of the New English Translation, your knowledge is beyond my comprehension. It is so far beyond me, I am unable even to fathom it. That's your knowledge. If I simply were to stop and ask, how much does God know? The psalmist's response is that you can't understand. You can't know everything that God knows, and because he is all-knowing and his knowledge is perfect, he knows yesterday, today, and future. God's knowledge is perfect. He never errs, never changes, and never overlooks anything. So he's able to say that even as you labor for him, don't worry. Because God is not man that he would forget about your labors. He will provide your reward. Your labors in the Lord are not in vain. But in Hebrews it tells us he will not forget them. Why won't he? Because he is all-knowing. The apprehension of his omniscience ought to bow us in adoration before him and should cause us to trust him completely. Great is our Lord and of great power. His understanding is infinite. God not only knows whatsoever has happened in the past in every part of his vast domains, and is not only thoroughly acquainted with everything that is transpiring throughout the entire universe, but is also perfectly cognizant of every event, from the least to the greatest, that ever will happen in the ages to come. God knows your situation. He is perfectly aware. Your husband, your wife may not know to what extent. One of the common statements from my wife is simply this: you don't know how I am feeling. And my answer has always been, no, I don't. I can never say, my wife, I know exactly how you're feeling. No, I don't. Well, firstly, I am not you. I've lived you long enough to know that you hurt, that you are going through pain, but the intensity, how it is affected you to its lowest and deepest extent, I don't know. So fill me in so that I may sympathize or identify with you better. But only God can actually say, I know better than you yourself know. I know how this has hurt you. You may actually deny it. You may project it. You may simply put up a defense. And many times you ask people when something bad has happened, how are you feeling? And the answer is okay. And I ask again, that this time I actually mean it. So how are you feeling? And then they say, well, not so good. Sometimes we actually don't even know ourselves to what extent. To what extent we've been hurt. I've had situations where people have gone to hospital and they've come back and they say to us, they have not found anything. You know, the doctors have failed. And then they go to a pastor or a counselor and they say to them, this is not physical, it's your mind. You are depressed. This is stress. Sometimes we probably don't even know ourselves that much. God knows every situation in your life. Great is our Lord and of great power. His understanding is infinite. God's knowledge of the future is complete, as his knowledge of the past and the present. And that because the future depends entirely upon God. Well, if this is who your God is, surely if you are a Christian, that's great comfort. That's great encouragement. He knows. You can be rest assured that if all of us do not know, there is somebody you can go to and say, you know about this. And you know that I've been accused falsely. You know I have not stolen. You know that I've been faithful. Yes, I may appear like, but you know that this is not what I have done. I remember in my childhood, one of the things that will cause me to just throw tantrums is when I knew I didn't do it. And then people for some reason were convinced I did it. And my reaction was not helpful either. Because then I just either cried or threw stones or just said wrong things, and they say, you see, the guilt ones are always afraid. But in my heart I know I haven't done this. And sometimes my sister wasn't very helpful. That if she's the one who's done, she never came to my rescue until weeks have passed and say, yeah, that's why I lie, because you don't listen. And then I go to my parents and she did it and it's past. Oh, beloved, God knows. God knows. The fact of God's omniscience is truth filled with much comfort and encouraging assurance. He knows your difficulties. He knows what you're wrestling with. He knows how confused the situation has caused you to be. He knows how you are doubtful, how you do not trust anyone. He knows. In times of perplexity, he knows where we are and how we feel, and he knows the state of our situation. It may be profoundly mysterious to you, quite incomprehensible to your friends. They may not be aware, but please do know that he knows. In times of weariness and weakness, believers, assure yourself that he knows. He knows your frame. He remembers that we are dust. Psalm 103 verse 14. He knows your very constitution. In times of doubt and suspicion, we appeal to this very attribute, saying, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Because sometimes we're not even aware of ourselves as we should. In times of sad failure, when our actions have contradicted our hearts, when our deeds have repudiated our devotion, and the searching question comes to us, do you love me? As Peter was asked, well, we can say to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Here's encouragement to prayer. There is no cause for fearing that the petitions of the righteous will not be heard, or that their sighs and tears shall escape the notice of God, since he knows the thoughts and intents of the heart. Even when our words do not coin our thoughts and needs and desires, our pain and frustration, God knows. There is no danger of the individual sent being overlooked amidst the multitude of supplicants who daily and hourly present their various petitions. For an infinite mind is as capable of paying the same attention to millions as if only one individual were seeking his attention. He knows each of our thoughts as we've gathered here. I can assure you of this, I don't. And I can tell you this as a prophet. None among here knows exactly your thoughts. No one understands the depth of your pain in a way they can say, I exactly know. No one can say, even when they have still gone through the same situation, the experiences, the feelings, the hurt, the pain are not the same. Only God can say, I know. If he knows, it's gloriously comforting. One of the comforts of life is to go to a situation and maybe you're assuming the person who's behind the chair, they've not seen you, they don't know you, they don't know your case, and you really are not you, and they're just doing something else, and you knock on the door and they say, just wait, I'll be coming. And then they say to the secretary, tell them, I know that they're there, and I know why they have come. Whatever panic, whatever anxiety you had stops, because you know that they know, and they know why you are there. Please be comforted that God knows, but this is a warning. If you are a Christian, be comforted. If you're living a holy life, be comforted. Well, if you're not, be warned. Nothing can be concealed from God. For I know the things that come into your mind, every one of them. Ezekiel 11:5. You can't hide sin from God. You cannot pretend to be saved. He knows your exact status. He knows when you are lying. He knows when you're telling the truth. He knows when you're proud. And he knows when you're sincerely humble. He knows the motive for which you do what you do. Though he be invisible to us, we not so to him. Neither the darkness of night, the closest curtains, nor the deepest dungeon can hide any sinner from the eyes of the all-knowing God. The trees of the garden were not able to conceal our first parents. Sarah might laugh cynically in the seclusion of her tent, yet it was heard by God. Achan stole a word of God and carefully hid it in the earth, but God brought it out. Ananias and Sapphira lied to the apostles, but not to God. David was at much pains to cover up his wickedness, but God had long seen it and sent a prophet to confront him. The all-knowingness of God is a warning as well as an encouragement. Are you a Christian? He knows about your circumstances. He knows your labors. He knows your pains. He knows your heartaches. He knows your disappointments. He knows about your sickness. He knows about the injustices you've gone through. He knows about the abuse that you've experienced. He knows about the longings you've had. And maybe as we sang, count your blessings, name them one by one, you're struggling to count them. He knows. Please trust him because he knows. But secondly, not only is God all-knowing, God is an all-wise God. God is an all-wise God. Psalm 104, verse 24. And that whole psalm, again, is really a reflection on how that God's wisdom is evidenced in how he governs the universe. How that he stretched the skies, how that he suspends the earth, and there is no foundation. How that he commands the seas. Here is where you stop, and they stop. And then The psalmist in verse 24 concludes it this way. O Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. O Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom you made them all. Now, the psalmist there is showing us that when we look at the universe, natural theology as it's called, that we don't only see God's magnificence, we see God's wisdom. Because part of his wisdom that he's able to provide food to the birds. He is not only aware of their existence, but he wisely ensures they are fed every day. He is so wise that he's given wisdom to ants, that they are able to fan out a city underground. And at the last I read, that their cities do not have any germs. Neither do the hives of bees. When sugar is one of the great attractions of germs, there aren't any in the hive. Who is responsible for that? God, in his wisdom. In his wisdom. As one reads Psalm 104, it's unmistakable that one of the main reasons the psalmist broke out in praise to Yahweh was because of wisdom in creating things as he did. No matter how sophisticated the computer is, it's no equal to the human brain. It's no equal. No matter how nice the transport system. I mean, if you go across to our friends, there is underground transport system, train system, aeroplanes and everything. If you go to the skies and see how many planes are crossing the paths, no matter how sophisticated, that's not close to your body transport system called the circulatory system. It's not close. We'll talk about the digestive system. Just think of your body and those two small kidneys and how they purify your body's fluids. Go to Ndola Teaching Hospital and look at the machines that do dialysis. Just one tiny thing. That's wisdom. The speed at which the eye closes. Just listening to a question recently, the part of the body that even when you dead, at some point it still continues to work, and they told us the brain. That's how wise God is. Well, wisdom of God is defined as that attribute of God whereby he produces the best possible results with the best possible means. That wisdom is understood as an application of knowledge in the best way possible there is for the best possible results. Hodge describes the divine wisdom as follows. Knowledge is a simple act of understanding, appreciating that a thing is, and comprehending its nature and relations or how it is. Wisdom presupposes knowledge, and this, the practical use which the understanding, determined by the will, makes of the material knowledge. God's wisdom is really God applying his perfect knowledge in the universe, in your life, in every circumstance, in such a way that he accomplishes the best results for his glory. Your suffering is not an accident. even though it is engendered by the devil, it's not an accident. That even in your worst circumstance, Paul will tell us, God is working. He's applying his knowledge to that situation, that when it's all done, you come out the best you could have ever come out of. And sometimes it would be by God directly answering your plea. If it's a job, it's by God providing one. If it's health, it's by God restoring your health. If it's marriage, it's by God providing a husband or wife. It's an unreasonable family expectations by causing them to understand. Well, sometimes it's simply by working with you through the situation and strengthening you. If this is who God is, He is all-knowing, and His knowledge is applied in such a way that the best result in your life is achieved, why wouldn't you trust Him? Why wouldn't you trust Him? It is interesting that as human beings, we trust sometimes even quack doctors. We know that this chap is not properly trained, but we go to them and we entrust our lives to them. Have you ever wondered that when you get in a vehicle, you're basically entrusting your life to the driver? Because the vehicle might actually be good, but I can decide to drive into a ditch if I hate you. But you entrust your life to me. It's interesting that husband and wife can actually be quarreling while the husband is driving. And you're thinking, if he fool us, he might snap. So that's not wise. But if that's what we do, why wouldn't we trust one whose knowledge is perfect and his wisdom is perfect? How many times have you taken your vehicle to the mechanic and it has come back worse, but you still take it back? The same one. No. That time you came, Tamwala and Direbuino. No, you spoiled the vehicle, but we still take it back. No, there is only one we can clearly trust. And lastly, that as you read Psalm 139 and Psalm 104, where there is an attribute that also is, that permeates both the all-knowingness and the wisdom of God, and is simply that He's all-powerful. If He's able to suspend the earth in the air, in suspense, if He's able to command the seas, stop here, and they do. If He's able to provide for the birds, if He's able to create the universe, and His power is demonstrated in the beginning, God said, let there be. There was nothing, there was zero. He's creating from nothing. That's how powerful He is. That's how powerful He is, that He can bring out of nothing something. He can create. He can rejuvenate. He can bring about vitality. He can bring about solutions. We cannot have a right conception of God unless we think of Him as well as all-powerful, as well as all-wise. He cannot do what he cannot do what He wills and perform all His pleasures unless He is all-powerful. What good is it if God is all-knowing and all-wise, but can't bring about solutions? That's not good enough. He must apply His knowledge in the best way to bring about the best results, and He must be powerful to do that. And we are not. And so sometimes, even as human beings, you can have the best ideas. By the way, any university you go to and they are into research, they have best solutions on the shelves. Why are those solutions there? They don't have the power to implement them or to, as it were, cause them to materialize. Go to University of Zambia and ask the things we're going through. Somebody has written about sanitation in Zambia. Somebody has written about how we can develop our towns better. Somebody has written about the economy. Somebody has written about democracy. Somebody has written about governance. Why isn't it happening? They don't have the power. Well, when God says he will do, no one can stop him. He is not only all-knowing, he is not only all-wise, he is all-powerful. And as we saw yesterday, nothing is impossible with God. Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son. We read in Hebrews, they are described in this context as good as dead. Sarah's body system had stopped producing what it should to conceive. She had passed menopause many years ago. There were no eggs. Well, God's statement was simply this: is anything too hard? Maybe you've given up on God because your situation has dragged on for a long time. Or maybe you think it's too hard. No, nothing is too hard. A rhetorical question is repeated in Jeremiah 32:27. Behold, I'm the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too hard for me? And Jesus said to his disciples, truly I say to you, only with difficulty will a rich person enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I tell you, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. When the disciples heard this, they were greatly astonished, saying, who then can? Please underline that word, can, not who may. Who has the ability? If this is how hard it is to be saved, who has the ability? But Jesus looked at them and said, with man, this is impossible. But with God, not just salvation, all things are possible. Oh, beloved, our belief in cessationism is not a belief that God does not work miracles. God works miracles. God still heals supernaturally. He does. God still intervenes in situations in extraordinary ways because that's who he is. So be careful that you're not boxing God and limiting God because of skewed theology. He's all powerful. He still can split Kafue River. He still can cause the little mountains we know to move. He still can provide food for more than 5,000 men. He still can bring your situation even after 4 years, 5 years, he can bring it to a conclusion. Can he be trusted? Absolutely. Won't you trust him? This is true. That his power, his knowledge, his wisdom is in a glorious, magnificent way demonstrated in your salvation and mine. That in the fullness of time, Jesus Christ came to save sinners. The Apostle Paul says, which appears foolish to those who are perishing, but the wisdom of God. He's powerful to save and powerful to address your situation. Please, I beg you, trust him. Trust him completely. Amen.